What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another video and to the channel. So for this video, I'm going to give you guys sort of like a guide, step-by-step, detailed explanation on how to achieve 400 wheel horsepower on your BMW F30 335i with the N55 electronic wastegate, or your F32 435i or F22 M235i. Pretty much any BMW with the N55 engine can apply to this video, since I have been getting quite a few questions on the performance mods on my BMW F30 335i, and just overall, how did I achieve 400 wheel horsepower. So in this video, I'm going to answer those questions and, like I said, give you guys a complete guide and steps that I took in order to achieve 400 wheel horsepower. All of the information that I'm going to be sharing in this video is just simply based off my own personal experiences with my BMW 335i and my own research, so I just wanted to point that out. So for those of you who may be new to my channel, I have a 2014 BMW 335i with the N55 electronic wastegate, and I'm at 400 wheel horsepower and 480 wheel torque with the performance mods that I have done to the car so far. So the first step I took, or the first thing I did, the first performance mod I added to the car to begin the process of getting to 400 wheel horsepower was installing an aftermarket bigger intercooler and an aftermarket aluminum charge pipe. Now, these two modifications aren't really what give you the increase in power. They are more supporting mods so that the engine can efficiently get you up to 400 wheel horsepower. Now, the purpose of the charge pipe is to replace the stock plastic charge pipe, which is prone to breaking under high pressure. There have been reports of it breaking even on stock power, and your chances of it bursting are increased if you start to push more boost and more power. So that is why you're going to want to replace it with an aluminum one, so that it can handle the power and not burst or anything under pressure. Now, the purpose of the bigger aftermarket intercooler is to replace the smaller stock intercooler that doesn't really have that much airflow. With the bigger intercooler, you're going to have much more airflow, allowing for more air to be cooled at a faster rate, at a more efficient rate, so that the engine can get as much cooler air as possible when it's leaving the turbo and going back into the intake manifold through the charge pipe. Essentially, the cooler the air is, the more power you're going to be able to get out of the combustion chamber. So yeah, that is why you're going to want those two mods, and that was the first step I took. Now, I have a video on how to install both of those parts. I did them both together in one video at the same time. If you guys want to check out that video, I'll leave a link in the description down below the video. Now, the next step, or performance mod I installed on my N55, was an aftermarket intake. Now, I decided to get an aftermarket intake from CTS Turbo, which is also the company I got my charge pipe and intercooler from. Forgot to mention that in the first part. But yeah, I got my aftermarket intake from CTS Turbo, and I have heard some things that it doesn't necessarily give you power, especially when the car is completely stock. I've heard that it does give you power once the car is tuned and brings all of the mods together, but not 100% sure that it really gives you a nice increase in horsepower, or if it really has any sort of contribution to increasing power overall. I mainly got it for the sound, since it sounds amazing. It pretty much just sounds like a blow-off valve. I'll go ahead and show you guys some clips of what this thing sounds like. So yeah, I absolutely love this intake. It has an awesome sound, all sorts of intake noises and swooshes and all that good stuff. So if you're looking for an intake, I definitely would recommend that one, but pretty much all intakes would have pretty much that same sound. But I would think that you could do without an intake. You could probably just keep the stock intake. Some people have reported that when you install an aftermarket intake, sometimes the engine doesn't really like it and it starts to not, run well and has a significant power loss. some people have mentioned. I haven't had that issue, so I think it just depends on your specific N55 on whether it likes it or not. So yeah, but like I said, you could probably do without an intake. You could probably just keep the stock intake and still be able to achieve 400 wheel horsepower, since again, like I said, the power increase isn't really directly from the intake. I would say the significant power gains come from the next mod that I'm going to mention here. So the next step, or the next performance mod I added to my N55 was a high flow catted downpipe, again from CTS Turbo. Now this modification is where you get the bulk of the power gains, as getting an aftermarket downpipe, whether catless or high flow, it will free up a bunch of exhaust flow, allowing for you to extract a lot more power. Now you'll get a little bit more gains with a completely catless downpipe, since it doesn't have any sort of cat in there. With a high flow cat, it has a lot smaller cat, or catalyzation mechanism, whatever that thing is called inside there. I'm not really sure. It has a significantly smaller one that is in the stock downpipe, which makes the exhaust flow really restrictive, allowing you to not really get the full potential power of the engine. I decided to go with a high flow cat because I think it sounds better. I honestly don't like how a catless downpipe sounds. I think it sounds kind of too raspy for me. Another reason was that with a catless downpipe, you have a very strong exhaust smell that may annoy you. With a high flow cat, the exhaust smell is not nearly as bad. It's still there, but not nearly as bad as a catless downpipe. So there's a couple things there you want to consider when you're deciding if you want a high flow cat or a catless. Now, high flow catted downpipes tend to be more expensive than catless. So another thing you want to consider when you're trying to decide between catless or high flow catted. My high flow cat was only $380 from CTS Turbo, which is really cheap compared to some of the other high flow cats that other companies sell. I'm not sure why CTS Turbo sells theirs for so cheap, but I've had zero issues with mine. The fitment was excellent when I installed it, and no complaints whatsoever still so far after almost a year. Again, I also have a video on how to install a downpipe, specifically the high flow catted downpipe from CTS Turbo. This is one of the more difficult installations, since you have to get under the car and disconnect. It's in like a tight spot underneath the car. But if you want to see how you could install a aftermarket downpipe at home in your driveway, I'll leave a link to my video down in the description of this video. So now that you have a downpipe, you're going to want to tune the car in this last most important step. You're going to want to tune the car pretty soon after you install your downpipe. You don't want to wait too long, because the engine isn't tuned for less catalyzation or whatever, since the O2 sensors are getting a reading that's not where it's supposed to be at. So the engine is not going to run efficiently at all. So you're going to want to tune the car so that it knows and gets rid of your check engine light that's going to pop up most likely. With a catless or high flow cat, you're most likely going to get a check engine light. I got one after I installed mine like the next day. But regardless, this is the most important step for you to get to 400 wheel horsepower. You're going to want to choose a tuning program to flash the car. Now, from what I've seen, the most popular tuning programs are boot mode and MHD for the BMW F chassis. I chose boot mode because I felt it was a little bit more convenient for me. And from what I've seen, MHD only works with Android. I don't have an Android. So either way, they pretty much do the exact same thing. The OTS maps that are available to you may be a little bit different. But regardless, once you choose one of those programs, for me, I'm going to use boot mode as the example. You're going to want to buy a license from them. For the boot mode license to flash the car with a tune, it is going to cost $595 for just the license, and then an additional $50 to get the map pack, which allows you to flash the car with any of the OTS maps that boot mode has. If you're planning to go up in stages, so start with stage 1, then go to stage 2, and then to the higher stages, you're going to want to get the map pack so that you can flash any of the maps. If you just buy the license, you only get access to just one map after you activate your license. So if you're going to start with stage 1 and go up, you're going to want to get the map pack for the extra $50. Now, the OTS map that you're going to want to use to get the car to 400 wheel horsepower is the stage 2 E30 map. Now, before you flash the car, you're going to want to do a little bit of calculating and measurements, because this map requires you to run E85, specifically an E30 mixture, which is 70% 91 or 93 gas and then 30% E85. Now, for those of you who don't know what E85 is, from my understanding, which isn't, the most detailed understanding, it's basically like an octane booster, which allows you to increase the octane level of your 91 or 93 gas to a higher level, which again in turn allows you to get more power out of the combustion. Again, like I said, I'm not an expert on E85 here. This is just from my understanding. And when you pair the E30 mixture of 91 and E85 with the Stage 2 E30 tune from boot mode, the car now is tuned for that E30 mixture and allows the engine to have a higher knock. From what I understand, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but now to calculate the correct percentage, because you do need to have your percentages as accurate as possible when you're mixing 85 and your 91 or 93 gas. I have a whole video on how to do this. I'll link it once again down in the description, that goes into detail on how exactly all the steps you need to do to run E85 and run this specific map from boot mode Stage 2 E30. But essentially, let me just explain here briefly. First, you're going to want to see if you have access to E85 in your area. You can simply go on Google and search just nearest E85 or just E85 map, and it'll give you a map of the United States, and just zoom in on your area, and it'll show you all of the stations that have E85. So you're going to want to make sure you have a station that has E85 before you do any of this. So let's say you do have access to E85 in your area. The next thing you're going to want to do is test the E85 and your 91 or 93 gas, whichever you have in your area. I have 91. You're going to want to test the ethanol percentage of both the E85 and the 91 and 93 gas. To do this, you're going to want to buy one of those E85 testing percentage bottles. You can find them on Amazon. The one I used was from Amazon. I'll link it down in the description if you guys want to check it out also. But you're going to want to get a sample of the 85 and then 91. And you're going to want to test the ethanol percentage using the bottle. You simply pour in the E85 or the 91 up to the fill line on the bottle, and then you're going to fill the rest of the bottle up with just water. And then you're going to mix it around for 30 seconds, just shake it and make sure it's mixed together. And then you're just going to let it sit on a flat surface, and eventually you'll start to see a line develop separating the water and the ethanol. And the line will appear at one of the line indicators on the side of the bottle. Each line has a percentage amount. So if it levels out at 80%, 85%, 70%, that means that is the true percentage of ethanol in the fuel. So like I said, you're going to want to do that for both the E85 and the 91. Once you get the actual percentage of E85 in the E85 fuel and the 91 or 93 fuel, you're going to want to download a E85 Calculator. The app I used is called E85 Cal. I have an iPhone, so it's just on the iOS App Store. I don't know if it's on Android, but it is on iOS, so if you have an iPhone, you can use that app. I haven't had any issues with it. But you're going to want to download that and then enter in all of the calculations you have. So the actual E85 content of the pump gas, the E85, and then how big is you're going to want to figure out how big your fuel tank is. And then you're going to want to calculate the percentage of fuel in the tank at the time of filling up and doing the mixture of E85 and 91. To calculate the percentage of fuel in your tank, you just go off the lines on your fuel gauge. Each line is 5%. So just count up 5, 10, 20, 30, however much, whichever point it's at with the little needle. And then whichever line the little needle points at, that's where you stop. And then you put that into the calculator, and then once you have all the data, you just simply calculate, and then it'll calculate the exact amount of gallons for E85 in 91 or 93 gas. And now that you have your exact amounts of fuel you need to put in the tank, you're going to want to go to the station and fill up with E85 first, and then the 91 gas so that it mixes a little better. Now for me, the E85 that I use is actually at a Shell gas station right next to the pump gas, the 91 gas that I use. That is the best case scenario, because then you can just simply go to that one gas station and fill up with the 85 first, and then fill up with 91 right after. And then that's it, you're ready to go. But for some areas, from what I've seen, the E85 is in its own separate station away from the pump gas. So you might have to fill up with the E85 first at that station and then drive to your regular pump gas station and fill up with 91 or 93. But regardless, once you fill up with the correct amount of E85 and 91 to produce an E30 mixture, you can now flash the car with the stage 2 E30 map, which you're going to want to do soon after you fill up, like the same day. You don't want to wait too long and drive around when the car isn't tuned for E30. You can still drive around, but the car isn't tuned and you won't be getting those significant power gains once you tune the car with the stage 2 E30 map. So what I did was just simply bring my laptop to the gas station where I filled up, and once I filled up, I connected to my personal hotspot on my phone and then just went through the whole process of flashing the car. I do have a video once again on how to flash the car with boot mode, going through the complete process of buying the license up to completing the flash. I have a full walkthrough. I'll leave a link down in the description of this video with all the other videos if you guys want to check out that video. So now that the car is tuned on the stage 2 E30 map from boot mode with the E30 mixture in the fuel tank, the high flow catted downpipe, the charge pipe, the intercooler, and the intake, the car should be at around 400 wheel horsepower at this point. If you have a place that does dyno sessions in your area, I definitely recommend you go take it to the dyno to see the results. You should be at 400 wheel horsepower. So I took my F30 335i to my local dyno with these exact mods, and I maxed out at 404 wheel horsepower. And I do have the dyno sheet to prove it to you guys, so I'll throw that up on the screen so you guys can see the numbers. Along with 404 wheel horsepower, you may have noticed that I reached a maximum of 488 wheel torque. Now, I was able to reach 488 wheel torque because I have the car also tuned on the XHP transmission flash, stage 3. One big thing that this tune does is remove any torque limiters. So when I did the dyno session, I did it in 6th gear, which is the gear you want to do your dyno session in because it is the gear that has the 1-to-1 ratio. This gear also has torque limiters when it's just still on the stock transmission tuning. But like I said, with the XHP transmission flash, it removes all torque limiters in both 3rd and 6th gear. This allows you to reach a higher amounts of torque output. Now, if I didn't have the XHP transmission flash, I still would have reached 400 wheel horsepower, but the torque would have been less, maybe about 420, 430 wheel torque. So if you do want more torque, I definitely recommend getting the XHP transmission flash stage 3. So that is it, you guys. That is all you really need to do to reach 400 wheel horsepower on your N55 engine. And the cost of all of this, all these mods for me was about $2,000, a little bit less, which I don't think is bad at all. And if you look at the power numbers and compare it to the stock power numbers, I gained about 100 wheel horsepower and almost 180 wheel torque, which I think is awesome for only $2,000. Now, I know 400 wheel horsepower still isn't that great when you compare to other cars that I've seen, at least that are at around 500 wheel horsepower, 600, 700, 1000. So 400 wheel horsepower really isn't that much when you compare it to those cars, people who do those kinds of builds. But in general, it is still really quick. You are definitely faster than all of the other regular cars on the road. I think this is plenty of power because it still allows you to have some level of comfortability while driving, and you can also daily, from my experience, I've been dailying this car pretty much and haven't had any issues. From what I've seen, if you get past like 500 wheel horsepower, that's when like you start having issues and stuff you got to take care of, and having a lot of other supporting mods and all that. But with these mods, I think you can have a pretty nice amount of power and still maintain reliability and comfortability while driving. Your chances of it leaving you stranded on the side of the road because something, broke is pretty low compared to higher horsepower numbers, I would say. So yeah, guys, that is pretty much it. That is all you have to do to reach 400 wheel horsepower for around $2,000. On your N55 engine. If you guys have any additional comments, questions, or anything, as usual, feel free to comment them down below the video. Again, I'll leave links to all of the install videos for these mods that I mentioned in the video, so you guys can see how to do all of this yourself. That'll save you a ton on labor if you install it yourself, because it'll definitely be more than 2,000 if you have a shop do these mods for you. So I think that is pretty much going to wrap up this video, you guys. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful and valuable and enjoyable. Give it a thumbs up if you did find it helpful, valuable, enjoyable, any of those things. And subscribe for more videos like this, where I talk about my F30 and my E90. But otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next video.